before we get into the books and scriptures, I think it's important to understand what's the lay of land of, in some ways, the Eastern philosophical systems. Meaning what has come largely from East, or let's say the Indian subcontinent. There are obviously other philosophical systems, and I shouldn't say Eastern, it's actually Indian or subcontinent, because East also has more philosophical systems. So how are they organized and how they evolved? So what I'll do is share a way I have understood them, and sort of put them in a tight 5-minute nutshell, because each one of them I said is there, and how you can remember what is what. But they didn't necessarily happen in this order. So I wanted to share that it's not chronological, but it's like the evolution of thought in some ways. At least it's how I try to synthesize it. So the first thought process is what is known as the Charvak system, which is largely around materialism, which believes that there is nothing beyond the 5 senses. There is nothing which is beyond life. So once I die, there is nothing beyond that. So everything is as long as I'm alive. So living with that belief system, that is known as the Charvak philosophy, where it was about just be merry, enjoy yourself, do whatever you want. In fact, one of the famous quotations is like, take a lot of credit, enjoy, eat ghee, which was the ultimate thing there. So just enjoy a pleasurable life. There is no consequence. There is no life after that. There is no karma. There is nothing. It's just about being here and living it fully. That's the Charvak philosophy. That was one thought process. From there, the other thought process which started evolving, which then said, no, there is something beyond. But before they went there, they started looking at a lot more about the physical world and categorize it. How do we think about it? And that was the Vaisheshika system. Vaishesh or Vishesh. Vishesh is from where this is coming, this system. This was where they looked in depth at what makes this world. And they came up with this concept of 7 padarthas or 7 elements, and the concept of an anu or an atom in each one of those elements, which is a unique. So that's where the traditional, you can say, science of India is in this system, encoded in this Vaisheshika system. So it built a very detailed understanding of the world, the material world, keeping in view that this was created for a purpose by a higher power, and we are answerable to them. So this is where this came. So as that inquiry into the physical world started, the question of how did it get created so beautifully, so organized, right? That it can't be random. So that there is a higher power. That inquiry started coming in. Because even when we look at the material world in depth, we'll see that there is a certain organization. It's not happening randomly or erratically, right? So who created, or how did even these laws come into being? Why? What created gravity? It's so structured. It's a formula that Einstein or Newton could come up with. It's so systematic. How did that happen? It's how everything is operating in such a structured, systematic way. That inquiry started once we started understanding the physical world in detail. And Vaisheshika system did a very thorough job. In fact, today also they look at it. It's not completely done with, but the Indian traditional science of the so-called the physical science was captured here. The one essence of it was that it said every element, every anu, every padarth, every anu in the world is special. There are no 2 same anus. That there is a Vishesh thing. There is special about everything. So similarly, every individual is special. There is something special about it. And that's why it's called as the Vaisheshika system, or Vishesh, coming from Vishesh. So this was the Vaisheshika system. Along with that, on the other side is the Nii system, the Nii philosophy, which talks about logic. Nii, we know it today as justice, but it was Nii is logic in the Indian. So it talks of the entire logic system and the sources of knowledge, like what are the different sources of knowledge. One is direct perception, for example. The other is inference, that I infer something. Because I see smoke, I conclude there is fire. That is also a source of knowledge. right? Then there is Shabda or testimony. Somebody else saw it, he described it to me, that becomes secondary knowledge. So in this way, they elaborated different knowledge systems, different sources of knowledge, the logic system of what connects it, what are the fallacies in what kinds of logic. So this is the whole work or treatise which is there on how we can gain knowledge. Again, the purpose here is to gain the ultimate knowledge, right? Where the ultimate knowledge is still the experience of the self or knowing this higher power which creates the world. So Vaisheshika Nyaya are at similar level where they see the multiplicity of the world and they see this higher power, but their focuses are different. One is evaluating it from a physical standpoint, science, and the other is from a logic, source of knowledge, or mental standpoint, right? So these two systems are sort of like together. Then we go to Sankhya system, where Sankhya from Nyaya, from this multiplicity of Vaisheshika and Nyaya, it moved to duality. It said there are two concepts. There is a Purusha and there is a Prakriti. Purusha is the consciousness and Prakriti is the life and the matter as we see it. And it is when these two come together in some way or interact in some way that this world that we see gets created, right? So it basically concluded that these are two broad categories of things. So it didn't defy Vaisheshika or Nyaya. It didn't say Vaisheshika Nyaya don't exist or they are wrong. It in fact built on Nyaya. It uses the same sources, logic. It has its own praman, or as they are called, the logic knowledge. But it, from moving from plurality, from that of the world, diversity of the world, it moved to duality and said there is Purusha and Prakriti. This is also where Triguna, the concept of Triguna was introduced. And it talks about the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas quite extensively. In fact, what we covered in our course was from Sankhya philosophy. Again, why is it named Sankhya? Because one of the explanations is that it quantifies everything. So from Purusha, then Prakriti, it evolves. Prakriti evolves into 25 elements. So very counted. The whole sutras, in fact, also in Sanskrit are numerical, that there are 11 of these, 5 of these, like that. And again, this is what to some extent we have used in when we describe the evolution process from that one to the multiplicity, right? So from one to Vigyanmay, the will, to the field. But the 25 is a little bit more detailed, which we didn't get into in this course. That will come, that happens in a more advanced course. But that's the Sankhya philosophy, moving from plurality to duality and keeping Triguna at the center of it. Along with Sankhya, similar is the Yoga philosophy. So we have to understand Yoga is also a philosophy, which is the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and I'll talk a little about it. But here, what Yoga did was, Yoga is also known as Sankhya plus Ishwar. So Yoga introduced just the concept of Ishwar, saying the Purush and Prakriti also come from Ishwar. There is one Ishwar. So it tried to, in a little way, just add that. So in fact, Yoga is known as Sa Ishwar Sankhya and Nirishwar Sankhya. So those are just, that's said as largely the key difference between Yoga and Sankhya. They are very similar. In fact, Yoga relies on the thought process of the Sankhya system. But the difference between the two, Yoga focuses a lot more on the tools, as we saw, the Ashtang Yoga, like we saw, right? So Yoga is a lot more on the tools, the practical side. Sankhya is the philosophical or the structural side of how the world is. It's more like a description of philosophy. Yoga is about applying it to reach that state of kaivalya. Yes, so that's Yoga. Now from there, the other system which went much more into saying that there is that one Lord. So the focus now moved from plurality to duality to getting more centered around the oneness, one God system. And that's the Purva Mimamsa. That's the first one. This is from the Karam Kand, and we will talk about that, what that means of the Vedas, the rites, rituals. So a lot of focus in Purva Mimamsa, the Karma Kand here is not what we understood, but Karams are the rites and rituals, the yajna, the sacrifices that are done. So this is where the system was that every person has to perform a certain set of yajnas in their life to achieve a higher goal. So there is life after death. So we have to plan for that. There is a whole system. So it is coming from that belief, but the focus is on karma or action, which is focused on the rites and rituals as prescribed in the Vedas. So in the modern time, we see, like for example, Arya Samaj is one example where a lot of focus is put on this. It talks of one God only in that sense. And the last is the Vedanta or the Uttar Mimamsa, as it is also known. So Purva means earlier, Uttar means after. It's not east and north. I've come to understand it's previous and after. So this philosophy is based on the Gyan Kand or the Upanishads of the Veds, and we will see what those mean a little, because we'll go a little more deeper in this their structures. But this is where it reached a stage where it was about complete unification. So Vedanta is where they're talking of the Advait system comes in Vedanta, where it's all is one. I am Aham Brahmasmi. So it focuses on that. For example, I am the universe, and the universe is me, Tattvamasi. So those are the 4 Mahavakyas which come in Vedanta, and they talk of this ultimate unification, that the whole world as it is manifested is one single thing. There is only one. And so in this journey, that's how we move from a lot of plurality to duality to these. And when we talk of these darshanas, we talk of them in pairs also. But I'll come to that. So now Vedanta is where all comes together, right? So this is the evolution of, in some ways, of thought process. Besides these, there were others which came again in Indian system, which is Jain, right? So Jain is which came, which is now also in 2 sects at least. This accepts the existence of Atma, the self. It is based on right faith, right conduct, and right knowledge. Those are the 3 key principles of Jainism. In fact, the right conducts are defined in 5, which are the yams of the 5 yam that we saw in the yoga system. So Jain, Yoga, they came around the same time chronologically also. That's what which was Mahavir who founded this. Then there is the Buddhist thought process, which is also evolved in India. This, in some ways, in some philosophies, the modern times again denies the existence of Atma. Both Jain and Buddhist, there the scriptures, at least from what I have understood, they have not been fully retained because it wasn't written then when Mahavir and Buddha were there, Gautam Buddha were there, and the system of oral transmission wasn't as structured. So there is likelihood, just like even in Christianity, there is likelihood that there was a loss in transmission, but there is a denying of the existence of Atma or self in the Buddhist sect. It has evolved quite a bit, right? We have seen, in fact, Buddhism exited India. It was evolved here, it exited, it moved to Tibet, China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Sri Lanka. So it has evolved into various varieties. And the 2 modern varieties, one, the way it's now evolving in the West as almost like a psychological science, not a spiritual science, but a tool for psychology. And it came back to India with the Neo-Buddhist, with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar bringing it back to India in his way. Right, so Buddhism has like diversified quite a bit from where it was, and there was one more, which is Sikhism, right, which has also evolved in India. This was started originally with the integration of Hinduism and Islam, right? That's where a lot of the core of Sikhism is. So you see again their scriptures, their writings. There's a lot of that coming in together. I'm choosing Sikhism, but around that there were many more, like Kabir. Kabir has also become a significant philosophy, school of thought, as well as now like a religion, a sect. And both Nanak Dev and Kabir actually fought for, were sort of largely against any structured religion, but they have become structured religions themselves, and that's the irony of it. So there is a lot of this thought process that's been there. And the reason you see left and right, because they are classified that way by, from what I have seen, by Vedants or people who are in the yogic system. So we have done that. It's not necessarily what at least we believe in, but essentially the classification is around what is called as astic, means they accept Veds as authoritative. So these 6 systems that we see on the right side are what accept Vedas or Veds as the authoritative text. All 6 of them. That is the common thing across them. But even in those, while they accept this, they have such diversification in how they have interpreted and thought about it. And the ones which are not, though they do not accept, are known as Nastic. So we know Nastic as something very different in our common language, but in Sanskrit it's Na Asti, right? So something you don't believe in, they just don't accept Vedas. So that's why I said this is a classification based on people who believe Vedas, right? As you can see. And since we are in a yoga course, yoga believes in Veda, so we are classifying it this way. So this is in no way, I think, any judgment. I want to make sure, because what we have here are very powerful thoughts and philosophies as well, which is Jain, Buddhist, Sikh, all are very powerful thoughts and philosophical systems as well that have evolved from this very same land, and we can't say anything otherwise about it. So, so this is for to some extent for the terminology. I'm just making clear that it's from a Vedic point of view, and in the yoga course we do it this way. And lastly, the other term is that these 6 are known as the 6 darshanas. So 6 Shat darshan. Shat is 6, so Shat darshanas. So darshana means, it comes from the word to see. Rishi is also comes from the word to see. Rishi is one who sees. That's why it's translated as seers. And darshana is what they saw. So what they saw, seeing is a perception. So the generic term actually is what they perceive. So it's not like they saw it with their eyes. So that's why sometimes that gets misleading. So it's what they perceived with their whole experience, right? So these are each systems which have been developed by different rishis, the founders, as they are known, or they have brought it together in their sutras. So they are known as darshanas. So darshana means what they perceived, and that drish, it's also drishti as we see. So the problem is drishti has become about eye, or what we see. That's how we understand it in Hindi. But drishti or darshana is about what we perceive. It's an overall understanding or overall perception. Now, this is where some key facts are there and some resources for the 6 systems. So Jainism, as I said, has been sort of described by Mahavir as we know it today. But even Mahavir said that there were 24 Tirthankars who, like in Jainism, the people are known as Tirthankars, the realized beings. There were 24 before him from Rishabh, and he's the one who formalized it at that time, at what he experienced. So in that system also, there is an evolution of people, that there are times when these realized beings come. And so Mahavir was that. Buddhism was, of course, Gautam Buddha, who founded through his own experience. It is also seen sometimes as a correction of what was happening in the society then, that the caste system had become very suppressive. And so a lot of this was about saying, how do you find a direct path to what the scriptures say? Of course, Sikhism was by Guru Nanak Dev. There were 10 gurus, 9 after him. He's known as the first one for Sikhism. There were 9 after him, and Guru Gobind Singh being the last. And he then made the Guru Granth Sahib. He said, we can't have people as gurus because that makes the religion vulnerable, because if the guru dies, then the religion is headless or directionless. So then he compiled the Guru Granth Sahib and said, that is the guru. So now the guru of all 6 is the Guru Granth Sahib, of course, which gives them direction. The 6 darshanas, Vaisheshika was founded by Rishi called Kannada, and so then and Nyaya by Gautama. Both have their sutras. So when we say they founded this system of philosophy, means they basically synthesized that knowledge into sutras. So just like in yoga, we saw Patanjali Yoga Sutras as the key system of philosophy, and we can read those 195 sutras to understand those. Similarly, Kannada did that for the Vaisheshika system. Gautama did that for the Nii system. So those sutras are there. We can understand them. Sankhya philosophy was by Kapil Rishi, who did basically systemize that structure. Patanjali did it for Yoga system. For Mimamsa, in short, as Purva Mimamsa is known, it was done by Jamini. And in Vedanta, it was done by Badrayan, which are known as Brahma Sutras. So, so these are the 6 founders or people who put these together. I'm sorry, I should have animated this slide, otherwise it looks very busy. But these are the names which are highlighted. The names of some of the others in Vedanta who have done a lot more work. There is a lot more evolution of, I can say, thought, or more emphasis is put on Vedanta now, a lot. So Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhavacharya, these are people. So Shankaracharya, very hard to date, but some say 7th century AD is the latest. Ramanuja is about 12th, 13th century. Same with Madhavacharya. And Vivekananda, as we know, is late 1800s. And Swami Chinmayanand is 1900, so 1960. And he passed away in 1993. So very recent, very modern, very contextual again. So these are other people who have understood this system. What you see is pictures. These are pictures of the books that are available. So there is a book called The 6 Systems of Hindu Philosophy by Swami Harshanand. This is a good primer. It's a very thin book, very short book, to get a sense of what these 6 systems are, a little bit in more detail maybe than what I have described. Then Tark Sangra is a very good compilation of sutras which capture Vaisheshika and Nyaya, the essence of both of these systems together. So these are paired together. Vaisheshika Nyaya is paired together, Sankhya Yoga is paired together, and Purva Mimamsa and Uttar Mimamsa are paired together. Sorry, yeah, as you saw in this one, right? So these are 3 sort of pairs that are known. So Vaisheshika Nyaya together is compiled in Tark Sangra, which was done, I think, about in the Middle Ages, 15th century or something, and a very good starting point to understand these 2 systems. Sankhya is unfortunately Kapil Muni's sutras are sort of missing. They say we don't know where they are exactly. So there was a Karika or a commentary by Ishwar Krishna, which was 2 generations after Kapil. So we can say it still holds the essence of the thought. So that is there, and that you can look at. Patanjali Yoga Sutras are there. There are many commentaries again. That has become the, I think, after the Bhagavad Gita, etc., very common scripture that's there where people have commented. So 4 chapters on freedom. This is by the Bihar School of Yoga or Yoga Publication Trust by Swami Satyanand. Is a very, at least I have found it to be a very good text, a very good commentary for Yoga Sutras. And so besides this, these publications, so I have put Advaita Ashram, Ramakrishna Mission have extensive work on these 4. Besides, they have actually extensive work on everything. So they also have work on the different religions. As we saw, universal religion is their theme. So they actually understand different religions also and try to integrate the thought. So in fact, for example, one of the very interesting books I found was the commentary on Sermon of the Mount, which is from the Bible by Swami Prabhavananda of Advaita Ashram. And he gave this talks in Christian countries in the West, US and Europe, where he brings that thought process together of Christianity, of what Christ said and what what Vedanta says, for example, right? So how there is a unification even in the thought process at the highest levels, while the tools, the rituals might be different. So anything from, at least from my side, Advaita, Ramakrishna Mission is very, very at the right level of depth, very informed. Yoga Publication Trust, which is from the Bihar School of Yoga in Munger, they do their emphasis is on Sankhya and Yoga, on these systems a lot, significantly. So very different and authentic, I would say, point of view or description of anything related to Sankhya and Yoga is there. with the Yoga Publication Trust. Om, this is a symbol of Arya Samaj. So there a lot of focus is on Mimamsa, Uttar Mimamsa or Karam Kand. And Vedant, again, Ramakrishna Mission is a lot. Chinmaya Mission, their publications are there. Swami Vivekanand's all work is in Advait Ashram or Ramakrishna Mission, of course. Chinmaya Mission, their work is also quite extensive in this. So these two publications is something that at least we have referred to a lot, used. Aurobindo ji is also another who has done a lot of writing, and there's a lot of work on Vedant from him as well. So this is the lay of land in terms of the sources of the thought process. And it's important to understand this because now I'll describe what are the scriptures that we can read, what are the texts, but it's important to know from which point of view they are coming from. That's why I said that the same Bhagavad Gita will be seen differently by different schools. It's from which philosophical system you are coming from, or which you have ingrained in you, you will sort of tend to interpret the same scriptures in a slightly different way. So it's just important to understand that there is such diversity of thought, right? In fact, the whole Vedanta system as well, which is this, which Badrayan tried to reconcile, but now there are, I think, 8 schools of Vedanta itself. Advait, Dvait, Vishesh Advait, Bhed, Abhed, Dvait. So there is a lot of schools that have emerged even in Vedanta itself, right? So there is such a diversity of thought that is celebrated, but keeping that unification in mind. So they all still go back to the Vedas, and they are trying to understand that. Okay. So moving to what? I'll need 5 more minutes, I think, over time today. This is, I know it's a lot, but I think we'll just see that. So in terms of what to read, the key Vedic scriptures, they are categorized in 2, which is Shruti and Smriti. So Shruti means what is heard. Shruti is about the ear, Shravan, as we saw. So that which is heard, and Smriti is that which is remembered. So it's coming from memory. The Shruti, why are they called Shruti? Because this is something that the rishis heard. So these are sounds that are in the universe. They're there today as well. It's just that our instrument of hearing today isn't sharp enough to hear them. Right? Just like seeing, our perception of sound also has a range. Right? We hear sounds in certain frequencies only. And our external instrument of sound, which is the external ear, only hears sound which is coming in airwaves. Right? We can only finally understand from airwaves, but sound also can travel in space without air. That's the belief. And so that which is heard, those are Shrutis. So there are no authors of Shrutis, and there are only Shrutis are Vedas. The 4 Vedas are the Shrutis. The word Ved or Veda means knowledge or wisdom. It comes from the word with, which stands for to know. So this comes from that's the meaning of the word Veda, to know. It comes from to know, means wisdom, knowledge. So this is trying to encapsulate the whole knowledge. Each Veda or Ved has 4 sections, broadly classified into 3 types. There is the Karam Kand, which itself has 2 parts, the Mantra Samhita and the Brahmana. So Karam Kand is the ritualistic portion. If you remember, that's what Purum Mimamsa is about, the ritualistic portion. So this has the hymns that are used in yajnas. So, and then the Brahmana is how to perform. So yajnas are like, there is a marriage yajna, when a child is born, Ashwamedh yajna we have seen for war, for expanding of territory. So different processes and different hymns, sounds are introduced in the Vedas to perform for different purposes, different activities. Right? There is yajna for rain to come down, for example. So these sounds, the purpose is the sound energy, when recited correctly, will influence the material world in a way to act in a certain way for you. Right? So that's how the Karam Kand is structured. So that's the purpose of the yajnas, is to perform these and how to perform these. Then the worship or the Upasana Kand comes, which are also known as the Aranyaks. Aranya means forest. So these are the forest books which give philosophical interpretations of the rituals on what happens when you do ritual. So that ritual is explained a little, why to do this. So for example, if there is a ritual for Agni Dev, it will talk about that, for example, right? So that's the next level. So first is rituals, the ritual, how to do the ritual, in some ways, why to do the ritual, like the philosophical interpretation. But the last is the Gyan Kand, the knowledge section, which consists of Upanishads. This is where the Upanishads are. As I said, they are as small as 12 verses. Mandukya, the smallest. Then there is Isha Upanishad, which is 18. So this is just encapsulating the whole essence, the philosophy of Vedanta is all in this. So Vedant means Ved Ant, the end of Ved. So they come towards the end of the Ved. That's why they are also known as Vedant. The word Upanishad itself means sitting near, upa, near or below, with devotion. So it's Upanishad is a way to learn by sitting below or near a teacher. That's how Upanishad, the word comes. So we are sitting below this whole thing. So there is a certain humility when we have to understand or accept the Upanishad. That's built into the word itself with devotion, and near or below means with humility, to do it with that humility. There are 108 plus Upanishads. So 108 is one count that has come. But 10 of them are called major or cardinal Upanishads. The only reason they have been called as major is because in the modern times, starting with Shankaracharya ji, he chose those 10 to comment on. He didn't comment on the others. So that doesn't mean they are lesser. So I think that has to be, so major word makes us feel like, oh, these are the key, that the knowledge in them is more. That's not the case. The knowledge is the same. It's just a different Rishi's darshan, right? A different Rishi saw it differently, so he put it down differently. Or he heard a different sound, so he captured it that way. So they are equally potent, each one of them. It's just that 10 of them have been commented on by others. So it's easier for us to maybe understand, because we do need commentaries in the start. Firstly, Sanskrit is itself quite tricky to understand, and then just they are so encapsulated that the knowledge is not written simply. So you have to understand the layers behind it. So 10 of them have been commented on by some of these acharyas, Shankaracharya, then Ramanacharya, Madhavacharya. So they are known as major Upanishads. Yeah, so that's the lay of land. Now in Vedas, there are 4 Vedas which we all know, but they are Rig, Yajur, Sam Ved, and Athar Ved. Each has sort of their specialization. Rig Ved is Ved of praise. So it is praising all the Lord, the Devas, etc. to please them. That's where the mantras are. Yajur Ved goes a lot more in detail on the rituals that are there. Sam Ved is melodious. That's the one which, the only one where you do a little bit of sing song kind of. Otherwise, the mantras are not said with sing song. And Athar Ved is Veda of chants. So chants means a lot of those special techniques, mystical techniques to get certain things or to influence certain things. That's what's there in Athar Ved. Smritis, those are, I think, simpler, more familiar. So first Smritis, our type is called etihas. So etihas is etihas, this happened, that's how we call it as history. This comprises of Mahabharata and Ramayana. Those are primarily, each one of them have different Gitas inside it. So Gita literally means a song, right? So the most talked about is the Bhagavad Gita, which comes in Mahabharata just before the Yudh. But there are many more Gitas even in Mahabharata, right? There is a Gita when Bhishma is telling Yudhishthir after the war on how to rule or govern the country, for example. So that is another piece of knowledge. So there are different such sections in different, but Bhagavad Gita is, of course, the 700 verses is the most well known and also said to be the summary of all the Upanishads. That's why it's the greatest. That's where Vedvyas took all the Upanishads, brought their summary together, tried to summarize it in the Bhagavad Gita. That's why it's extolled so much. In Ramayana, there is Ram Gita, there is Vibhishan Gita. Vibhishan Gita is when Ram talks to Vibhishan, just like Arjuna talks to Krishna talks to Arjuna in Mahabharata. Vibhishan Gita is Ram talking to Vibhishan about about his philosophical discourse there. So that's part of Itihas or Smriti. Then there are the Puranas. 18 Puranas, 6 on Vishnu, 6 on Shiva, 6 on Brahma. So Puranas, both Puranas and etihas, what they are trying to do is they take the knowledge of the Vedas, right? The essence of the Vedas and bring it out in a story form. As we saw, Bhakti was about Vyakhyasam. It's about stories. So it's told in such a beautiful, storyful way that we get that essence of that knowledge without it being very dense. So in Upanishads, it becomes very dense because it's 12 verses, right? Everything is there in 12 verses. It's complete. There is nothing more, for example, or 18 verses. Here, that same thing is told in story. So it gives you a lot of role models, for example, on what to do. Because Upanishads will not tell you what to do. That we have to figure out for ourselves. But what the Puranas and Itihas try to do is they translate that knowledge into action and show us like, oh, Vishnu as a role model, Shiva as a role model, Brahma as a role model, or the different deities in that. What does Ganesha do? What is Kartikeya doing? What is the role of different Devis, Lakshmi? So they are trying to symbolize or personalize the whole concept of energies and bring it to life for us through these stories. And that's how we remember them also much more easily. So that's how that piece of information is being brought out to life. The 6 Puranas, Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma, they are taking one lens of the whole system. So from a Vishnu lens, how the world is, from Shiva, how the lens is, and from Brahma, the 3 forces, how it is. And this also includes some other texts like Manusmriti, the other Dharma Shastras which are there. So this is the Vedic scriptures. Now to work with the Vedic scriptures, there is a very extensive knowledge. I think that's the purpose of this, that there is a lot to learn, a lot to read. There is so much that is there, it's quite endless. And I hope you're not getting overwhelmed because you don't have to read all this. I'm just sharing in a very brief way to say that there is a lot, right? There is depth in this, and it is a lifetime journey. The knowledge side is also quite deep, and we are still learning. So I also don't know what is there in or read all of these, but I'm trying to summarize just so that as we are thinking of becoming, as we are moving in this yoga instructor journey also, right, the foundation of yoga course, we know these basic things. We are aware that it's not such a limited view of the world. Sometimes that happens. There's just such vastness in it. So the other Vedic scriptures that are there to support these, to understand these, one is the Upaved. Upaved means like a short Ved or a sub-Ved, right? So it's practical and material knowledge. So Vedas are philosophical or aspirational, but Upaved, which are associated with each Ved, are practical knowledge. There are and Vedang are Ved Ang. So they are the Ang of Ved. So they are to support, to enable understanding all the other scriptures. Okay, so Upaved are 4, which we know, Ayurveda. That's what practically we know, right? So one of the Veds is Ayurveda. It's linked with the Rig Ved. So it's the knowledge of health, medicine, life. So remember, the word Ved means knowledge, right? So this is knowledge of Ayur, of life. Dhanur Ved, that's the knowledge of warfare, right? So the whole art, the Brahmastra, all that we hear, that we have seen in all the stories, if we have seen how war was happening, Yudh Niti, what are the weapons, all that comes in Dhanur Ved. Gandhar Ved is about arts. So you see that how important arts was always. So it's a very complete set of knowledge. So it's about arts, music, dance, singing. So it's linked with Samved, if you remember the Veda of melodies, and Arthaved, which is economics and governance. So Artha Shastra also it's known as, but this is Arthaved that is there. So this completes the practical knowledge also. So this is just not a philosophical system. There is practical way of living is encoded in this as well. And a lot of discussion happens on this, right? Leadership by Chanakya, etc. is also very popular these days. So Vedang, what are the 6 Vedangs? Again, you will see how thorough it is. Siksha, this is phonetics. So how should I chant or pronounce a particular mantra, right? What does it mean? So what are the different ways of pronouncing? So it has those details, which it will tell even to learn a mantra, like because the oral tradition was so important in the past, right? So to learn the mantra in Siksha, they would teach the students first to say it in the straight order, then they would say it in the reverse order. So they perfect each syllable. So mantra is made of different syllables, like right? Just like Om is 3 syllables, aum. So every mantra has so many syllables. So the students would be asked to first recite straight, then back, reverse order, etc., so that they understand. That's what Siksha teaches. These are also known as the nose and the lungs, the capacity, the lungs to breathe of the Vedas. Then there is Vyakaran, which is grammar. This is the mouth of the Vedas, the structure, the language. Chandas, the meter, which is what is the rhythm, right? In some ways, the feet match our rhythm. So if you see, you tap your feet with rhythm. So that's known as the feet of the Vedas. The meter in which the slokas have to be said. Niruktam, which is the etymology. So what does the words mean? What are the so when we say Ved comes from with, that will come in the Niruktam part of the text. Jyotish. So Jyotish, we now know Jyotish as predicting the future, but this is essentially, Jyotish Shastra is about astronomy and how the planetary systems are moving, what is the calculation, and the astrology, that what influence that movement creates here, right? That gravity, the quality of that gravity, what does it do here, and how it influences the structure. So these are actually known as the eyes of the Vedas. So this is where, again, it's giving us a sense of perception about seeing the future. It doesn't change the future. It just allows us to see it, of what is likely, what's coming. It's not about changing. So the way it is practiced today, where now you wear this stone, do this, it will change. That's not what the purpose is. It's about figuring out what will be the auspicious times, for example, to do the particular yajna, right? So that's why it's giving us a foresight. It's giving us eyes to see a little bit of what's happening. And kalpa, which are the arms, which is about how to perform the yajna. So if you have seen yajna, how to give ahuti, how should your hand be, all that then comes in the kalpa. So if you see again how complete this is, that there is nose and lungs, there is the mouth, feet, ears, eyes, arms. So each element of that is into how to even interpret these Vedas, what to do with them. Yeah. And yeah, all of this very nicely has been captured in this one simple book called the Vedas for beginners. Like this is written by Sri Chandrasekharji Saraswati. He's the Shankaracharya of the Mutt in Kanchipuram Mutt. I think it's the previous one. Very nicely written, very simple. So if you're more interested in knowing about these, a little bit more detail in each one of these will be there in this book. Yes. So I'm seeing there is a lot, but yeah, I think I'm also aware we are out of time. I don't know. Yeah, there is just one thing. Are there questions or? Yes, Swati. काफी लगेगा तो इसलिए जल्दी नहीं है. जल्दी नहीं है, होगा. अपना काम तो वही है, right? Process and goal रखो. It will happen. It will happen when it has to happen. We keep doing what is in our control. Yeah, and for the curious minded, there is so much to read. I haven't been able to read today's chat. Jaya in a state of overwhelm. So please, yeah. Yeah. Yes, those are the Vedas. So yeah, all are. Is there any question on this quickly before we just one more slide? I know time is also out. We'll close then.
So I will have to bug out right now. I have a meeting that starts at 9, so I will have to take everybody's leave. Okay. Maybe I know there is a recording, so perhaps I'll come back and I'll have a look at the recording.
Okay. Yeah, there is just actually one more slide before we close, but I thought if there is any high level questions here, doesn't.
No, I'm so interested because ये ऋग्वेद होता है, साम, यजुर, अथर्व, so हम बचपन में ये सुन के बड़े हुए हैं. But you know, nobody explained के ऋग, साम, अथर्व और यजुर में क्या है और वो क्यों है. But ये 4 वेद हैं, ये मतलब you know दादी नानी ने हमको बचपन में बताया था कि ऐसा है. So that's why the memory is there. But the understanding of what's really there wasn't there. So yeah.
So this is the start, at least some attempt.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. So we'll move to, seems no question, so we'll move towards the end, closure. Uh, and I think the closing is just, we've started the course with that. And I think as we close this philosophy part of the theory section, and whatever the remaining, starting with the remaining 2 weeks of the course and the life ahead, this is a start. I wanted to end with this quote also from Vivekanand ji. And this is, I think, direction for all of us, that those who want to be yogis must give up once for all this nibbling at things. Take up one idea, just one. Make that one idea your life. Think of it, dream of it, live on that idea. Let the brain, muscles, nerves, every part of your body be full of that idea. And just leave every other idea alone. This is the way to success. And this is the way great spiritual giants are produced. Others are mere talking machines. And I will leave this slide for a minute.